I knew something was wrong before Celeste turned around. The nursery door stood open, and the sharp whine of a drill cut through the quiet house. When I stepped inside, I found my sister fastening a stained glass panel into the window frame without asking me. In the room that was meant for my daughter, the panel showed blue irises, almost identical to the design waiting unfinished on my work table at Blue Lantern Glassworks. In one corner, etched into pale glass, were the words, "For Iris, from Aunt Cece." Marcus stood in the hallway behind her, his arms folded loosely across his chest. He had clearly seen what she was doing. He had not stopped her, questioned her, or even looked surprised. "Take it down," I said. Celeste lowered the drill slowly. "You need to get used to the fact that not every decision about Iris belongs to you." For a moment, I thought I had misunderstood. What is that supposed to mean? Celeste looked past me toward Marcus. He said nothing. The silence answered before either of them did. "You need to pack your things," I told her. "You leave by tomorrow morning." Her face changed immediately. The confidence disappeared, replaced by the wounded expression our family had responded to all her life. "You are throwing out a woman who has nowhere to go?" Marcus stepped between us. "You are losing control," he said. "Pregnancy has made you too sensitive, and you do not appreciate anything Celeste has done for us." "For us?" "She cooks. She helps. She has been trying to keep this house together while you obsess over the studio." I stared at him. He continued before I could speak. "You are not thinking clearly enough to make every decision about the baby right now." Something inside me stopped bending. "This is my house," I said. "This is my work. This is my child." Marcus struck me. The pain came second. First came the silence. No one moved. The drill remained in Celeste's hand. Marcus looked at me as though I had forced him into something unfortunate. Celeste did not gasp, step forward, or ask whether I was hurt. Marcus spoke first. "If you keep acting like this, Celeste will take better care of Iris than you will." My sister remained calm. That calmness frightened me more than the blow. She was not watching an unexpected disaster. She was watching a plan move forward. I did not argue. I took my handbag, keys, and phone. Marcus did not stop me. Celeste did not apologize. By the time I reached Talia's apartment, I could not remember the last time I had felt Iris move. Talia opened the door, saw my face, and asked only, "Is the baby moving?" When I shook my head, she grabbed her keys. At obstetric emergency, a nurse placed monitors across my stomach. The room filled with static, then a rapid heartbeat. Iris was alive. I began to cry so hard the nurse held my shoulder. My phone lit up. Marcus had written, "I am sorry I lost my temper, but you are making Celeste and the baby unsafe." Talia took screenshots, forwarded them to a new email account, logged every device out of my cloud storage, changed my passwords, enabled two-factor authentication, and photographed the mark on my face. The nurse documented the injury and my statement. Before leaving the hospital, I filed a police report. 9 weeks later, Naomi Kerr placed a folder on the table between us. Its title read, Postpartum Transition Plan. They were not only preparing for the birth, she said, they were preparing for a life in which you no longer had decision-making power to understand why my sister believed she could step into my place. I have to begin with what our family taught us. Celeste was allowed to need everything, while I was praised for needing nothing. I was 3 years older than Celeste, which in our family meant I was expected to understand more, forgive faster, and need less. When we were children, I gave her the bedroom with the larger window because she said the morning light helped her feel less lonely. I canceled outings with friends, when our mother needed someone to pick her up, when Celeste knocked over Diane's favorite lamp. I accepted the blame because she was already crying. In college, I worked extra shifts at a campus bookstore to help pay for Celeste's textbooks. Yeah. Whenever we argued, I was the one told to apologize first. "You are the older sister," Diane would say. "You are stronger," I heard praise. Celeste heard a rule about how responsibility would always be divided. No one called it favoritism. In our house, unequal burdens were described as love, maturity, or keeping the peace. If she broke, someone else repaired the damage. If I broke, I was expected to do it quietly. My grandmother May was the first person who questioned that arrangement. "You do not have to prove you can carry everything people place in your hands," she told me one afternoon. May taught me stained glass in a workshop behind her house. She showed me how to score a sheet without forcing it, how to listen for the sound of a clean break, and how to fit separate pieces into a design. "Glass is beautiful because it is fragile," she said. "The lead lines are not flaws. They give the picture enough structure to survive." I remembered that lesson better in my work than in my life. When May died, she left me approximately $275,000. It was not enough to make me wealthy, but it was enough to give me a foundation. I used $70,000 to open Blue Lantern Glassworks. I put $55,000 toward the down payment on a small craftsman house before I married. The remainder stayed in an investment account held in my name. I built the studio inside a former print shop with high windows and uneven brick walls. I restored church windows darkened by decades of candle smoke, stained glass panels from historic homes, Tiffany lamps with fractured shades, and decorative glass removed from buildings scheduled for renovation. I loved the honesty of the material. A crack changed how light traveled through a panel. A weak lead frame pulled every surrounding piece out of alignment. One replacement in the wrong shade could disturb an entire image. Damage could be repaired, but never by pretending it had no effect. I met Marcus when a contractor recommended him to review my first year of business records. He was a Virginia-licensed CPA who specialized in small companies. He created cash flow forecasts, organized tax deadlines, helped me purchase insurance, tracked overdue invoices, and taught me to price projects without apologizing for the value of my labor. On difficult mornings, he arrived at the studio with coffee before I had asked. He respected my hands. He watched me cut glass as though precision were a language worth learning. We dated for 3 years before we married. At events, clients often gestured toward the restored windows and said, "Evie built all of this herself." Marcus always smiled. Then he would add, "She makes the art. I keep the art from going bankrupt." People laughed. I laughed too. Only later did I understand that Marcus repeated the joke because some part of him believed it. He saw himself as the invisible structure beneath my success and resented that everyone noticed the light instead of the frame. When Blue Lantern won a large restoration contract, the administrative work increased. I signed a limited financial authorization allowing Marcus to communicate with tax agencies, move money from my reserve account into the studio's operating account for tax payments, and pay certain approved business invoices. The document was specific. It did not authorize him to purchase real estate, invest in another company, give away my money, or create loans in my name. She said Ryan had closed their joint account without warning, canceled the credit cards, moved to another state, and left her credit-damaged landlords would not approve her applications. She showed me screenshots of declined payments and an email from a leasing office. "I only need 90 days, she said. Just enough time to find work and rebuild. Before I could answer, Marcus put a hand on my shoulder. "She is your sister," he said. "3 months is not a problem. We will figure it out." I remember feeling grateful that my husband understood loyalty the way I did. During the first month, Celeste became the easiest guest imaginable. She cooked dinner, bought groceries, cleaned the kitchen before I woke, and transferred money toward the electric bill without being asked. She left handwritten notes beside my coffee mug, thanking us for giving her somewhere safe. When I was working at the studio, she answered calls at the house and wrote down messages. She showed me job applications, rental listings, and spreadsheets comparing deposits and monthly costs. "I am not planning to stay," she told me. "I just need to get steady again." Everything she did seemed designed to reassure me that helping her had been the right choice. The changes began during the second month. Celeste redirected her mail to our address. She moved several storage boxes into the basement because the rental unit she had used was too expensive. She reorganized the kitchen so the dishes she preferred were easier to reach. New towels appeared in the bathroom, then matching bowls, then framed prints in the hallway. She began referring to the living room as our shared space. A sweater, 2 notebooks, and a bottle of perfume appeared in Marcus's home office. When I asked about them, Celeste laughed and said she had been filling out applications at his desk because the internet connection was stronger there. Each change was too small to justify a serious argument. Taken together, they should have told me she was no longer arranging a temporary stay. She was building permanence one ordinary object at a time. Celeste also learned where Marcus wanted to be praised. She often sat beside him while he reviewed the studio books. She asked about quarterly taxes, profit margins, cash flow, property values, and what it would cost to expand Blue Lantern into the empty space next door. Marcus explained everything. One evening, I heard her say, "I used to think Evie built all of this alone. Now I understand you are the person who keeps it running." Marcus began telling her things he had rarely said to me. He said I ignored numbers until they became urgent. He complained that he had to correct unrealistic decisions and that clients treated him like an assistant instead of the person protecting the business. No one recognized the work he did, he said, months later. I found the first email that marked the shift between them. Marcus had written, "I am tired of being treated like the employee in a life I helped build." Celeste replied, "Then stop asking permission to be recognized." At the time, I knew nothing about that exchange. I was thinking about a pregnancy test. After months of trying, 2 pink lines appeared on a Tuesday morning. Marcus held me in the bathroom while I cried. When we told Celeste, she cried too, bought a pair of socks, and promised to become the best aunt in Virginia. Then her language began changing. "We need to reorganize the house. Iris will need more than 2 people. Evie cannot keep working like this. Marcus should prepare to manage the studio. I can handle the daytime care." The word we appeared so often that I stopped noticing how rarely it included me. As the 90-day deadline approached, I reminded Celeste that she needed to choose a move-out date. She showed me 3 rejection emails from landlords. Marcus asked for 1 more month. 1 month became 3. I never truly agreed. I simply failed to turn my objection into a consequence. One evening, I passed Marcus's office and heard Celeste speaking softly. "She has talented hands," she said. "But you are the one holding this life together," Marcus answered. I wish she understood that. Celeste first interfered with my work in a way I could not dismiss during a meeting with 2 representatives from a historic hotel in downtown Richmond. They had come to Blue Lantern to finalize a large restoration contract involving 12 stained glass panels from the hotel's original dining room. I had spent weeks preparing estimates, schedules, and conservation notes. Celeste entered carrying coffee. She set the cups down, smiled at the clients, and remained beside the table instead of leaving. "Evie may need a longer break after the baby is born," she said. "But Marcus and I have learned enough of the process to keep the project moving." I had never trained Celeste. The clients looked at me differently after that. Who would supervise the restoration? Would I finish before maternity leave? Could the studio continue without interruption? Was Marcus now managing production? I answered every question, but confidence had already left the room. 2 days later, the hotel selected another studio. Marcus said Celeste had only been trying to help. "You became defensive," he told me. "That is what made them nervous." She told them she could run my work. "She said we would support you." I banned Celeste from speaking to clients. She cried at the kitchen table and said I had humiliated her for caring about my future. 2 evenings later, she cooked my favorite dinner and placed fresh flowers beside my plate. That pattern became difficult to name. Every intrusion was followed by tenderness, as though kindness afterward erased the boundary she had crossed. Her involvement in my pregnancy expanded in the same way. Celeste followed me to an appointment and waited in the lobby. Although I had not invited her, she asked Marcus about the results before asking me. She sent him lists of baby names, touched my stomach without permission, and told relatives she would help raise Iris. I later found photographs of the nursery saved on her phone from several angles, including inside the closet. I asked Marcus to make one thing clear: decisions about Iris belonged to her parents. "You are turning concern into a crime," he said. Meanwhile, a different version of me began circulating outside the house. Celeste texted Diane, "I am worried Evie is under too much pressure." Marcus told friends. I was not sleeping, became angry without warning, and no longer managed financial decisions well. He suggested I might need to step away from Blue Lantern because pregnancy had made my judgment unreliable. One afternoon, Celeste followed me into the kitchen and repeatedly asked why I was so threatened by her help. When I finally told her to stop, she lifted her phone as though recording. After that, I measured every word inside my own home. A week later, Celeste's phone lit up while she was upstairs. The message preview was from Marcus. "Do not tell her. I will handle it my way." I did not unlock the phone or search through it. I photographed the screen and sent the image to the private email account Talia had helped me create. Then I reviewed the studio books. 4 entries stood out: $2,850, quarterly tax reserve, $3,400, imported glass deposit, $4,900, kiln ventilation upgrade, $5,100, expansion planning. I remembered discussing taxes. I did not remember approving the other expenses. When I asked Marcus, his expression hardened. "This is exactly why you gave the system to me," he said. "You cannot refuse to understand the finances and then turn around and accuse me." "I did not accuse you. You did not have to." I stopped asking questions aloud. Instead, I photographed statements, saved account numbers, downloaded tax reports, and wrote down dates. I did not yet know whether the entries were evidence of theft, poor bookkeeping, or something I had forgotten. But I knew I needed records Marcus could not revise later. I drafted a move-out schedule for Celeste and placed it on the dining table. Marcus read the first line, then pushed the page aside. "Do not make decisions like this when you are emotional." That was when I understood the trap. Any boundary I set could be dismissed with one word: unstable. The following afternoon, I returned home early and found Celeste in the nursery holding my iris window sketch. She did not look startled. "I only wanted to know what you planned for her to see first every morning," she said. The familiarity in the words, her and every morning, made my skin turn cold. The iris panel was the first thing I had ever made only for Iris. I designed it from 3 shades of blue glass, with one small yellow piece at the center of the flower and narrow lead lines holding every petal in balance. It was meant to catch the morning light above her crib. I had finished cutting the pieces but had not installed them. When I came home that afternoon, I heard a drill from the nursery. Celeste stood on a step stool beside the window, fastening a stained glass panel into the wooden frame. It was not mine, but it copied my design closely enough that I recognized every curve. In one corner, someone had etched, "For Iris, from Aunt Cece." The copied panel was brighter than mine and technically beautiful, which made the violation worse. Someone had handled my private sketch, selected nearly identical glass, and transformed a promise I had made to my daughter into Celeste's public claim. Marcus must have known how long the commission required. He had watched me search for the original drawing 2 weeks earlier and had said absolutely nothing. Celeste had taken my drawing and paid another artist to reproduce it. "Take it down," I said. She turned, still holding the drill. "You have to learn to share decisions. You will not be the only person caring for Iris." "Who do you think gave you that authority?" Celeste looked toward the hallway. Marcus stood there. He did not answer. "Remove it," I said. "Pack your things. You leave tomorrow morning." Celeste's expression collapsed. Tears appeared almost immediately. "I have nowhere to go. You know that." Marcus stepped between us. "You are being selfish," he said. "You are unstable, ungrateful, and too emotional to make every decision right now." She copied my work and drilled it into my daughter's room. She was trying to do something loving. "This is my house," I said. "This is my work. This is my child." Marcus struck me. The room became silent. Celeste did not gasp. She did not move toward me. Marcus stared as though I had forced him into an unfortunate response. Then he said, "Celeste will take better care of Iris than you will if you keep behaving like this." That sentence ended the marriage before any court document did. I understood that they had built a version of events in which I was not the woman being displaced. I was the danger they needed to manage. I did not argue. I took my handbag, keys, and phone and left. Marcus did not stop me. Celeste did not apologize. At Talia's apartment, I realized I had not felt Iris move. Talia drove me to obstetric emergency care. The monitors found a steady heartbeat. A nurse documented the mark on my face, photographed it with my permission, and recorded my account. Marcus sent one message. "I am sorry I lost my temper, but you are making Celeste and the baby unsafe." I saved it and filed a police report. A magistrate issued an emergency protective order. Marcus was served and temporarily removed from the house. That night, Talia helped me change every password Marcus might know. We reviewed logged-in devices, enabled two-factor authentication, placed a fraud alert on my credit file, downloaded bank statements, and forwarded copies to a new email address. I did not reply to Marcus. The next business day, Naomi Kerr requested a preliminary protective order and filed for divorce. She sent preservation notices requiring Marcus to keep financial records, messages, and electronic files. She also began preparing a pendente light motion to restrict unusual asset transfers while the divorce was pending. Celeste was not automatically removed under Marcus's order. through her attorney, she said she would stay with a friend. Naomi required her to sign a written acknowledgement that she was leaving voluntarily, surrendering her key, collecting her belongings at a scheduled time, and agreeing not to return without written permission. I did not know where she went. My mother called that evening. Was involving the police really necessary? Diane asked. And where is Celeste supposed to live? Last night, I did not have anywhere safe to live either, I said. But you are only asking where she will go. Diane became quiet at Naomi's office. I opened the folder of statements I had saved before leaving the house. She studied several transfers, enlarged one image, and pointed to a recipient name. Who is Cedar Row Living LLC? I looked at the screen. I have never heard of it, I said. Naomi introduced me to Isabel Romero 3 days after we discovered the name Cedar Row Living LLC. Isabel was a forensic accountant with a calm voice and the habit of reading every document twice before asking a question. She requested my investment statements, the studio ledgers, tax records, the limited financial authorization I had signed, lists of approved payees, emails with Marcus, and the actual schedule of tax payments made on behalf of Blue Lantern. She did not begin by calling anything theft. Before we know where the money went, she said, we need to know what they called it. Marcus had been authorized to move money from my reserve account into Blue Lantern's operating account for taxes and to pay certain approved invoices. He used that legitimate access as the first step. The second step was harder to see. He created payees whose names resembled real businesses, an imported glass supplier, a ventilation contractor, and a tax consulting service. Each name looked familiar enough to pass during a quick review. The money moved in 3 stages. First, funds left my investment reserve and entered the studio's operating account. Then Marcus sent those funds to 2 intermediary accounts under misleading vendor names. From there, the money reached Cedar Row Living LLC. Naomi told me not to confront him. Do not tell Marcus we found the company, she said. People who believe their secret is still safe usually keep creating evidence. I followed her instructions. For years, silence had meant swallowing what I knew to avoid conflict. This silence was different. It was deliberate. It protected the records before Marcus could revise his explanation or destroy what connected him to the transfers. Isabel compared every suspicious entry against tax confirmations, purchase orders, vendor files, and bank records. Several payments labeled quarterly taxes had never reached any government agency. The imported glass deposits had no corresponding orders, shipping records, or invoices. The ventilation company had no functioning business address. The expansion planning charges had nothing to do with the studio. At first, Isabel traced slightly more than $61,000. When the banks produced additional records, the total rose to approximately $96,400 transferred over 18 months. The amounts had been spread across many transactions, usually after large client payments cleared or investment income entered the reserve account. Marcus had chosen moments when the overall balances were high enough to hide the loss. Public records revealed what Cedar Row Living owned. Celeste was listed as the LLC's manager. The company held title to a duplex outside Petersburg. Its original mailing address was a private mailbox about 30 minutes from my house. An operating agreement showed Marcus holding a 49% beneficial interest. His name did not appear directly on the deed, but he had preserved nearly half the financial benefit. The duplex had been purchased 5 months before he struck me. I stared at the acquisition date. For months. Celeste had shown me rental rejections, cried over her credit, and claimed she could not leave because she had nowhere to live. She had possessed an interest in a property the entire time. Then I noticed the closing date that evening. Marcus had taken me to dinner after an ultrasound appointment. Iris's heartbeat had been strong. He had raised a glass of sparkling water and told me we were celebrating our daughter. On the same day, he had completed the funding for a hidden property with my sister. I did not cry when Isabel told me the total. $96,400 was still a number. It could be placed in a column, traced across accounts, and measured against records. I cried when I saw the date. The lender's preliminary file indicated that the down payment had come from a capital contribution made by me. I never invested in that company, I said. Naomi issued subpoenas for the complete closing file, source of funds documents, operating agreement, and any capital contribution certification submitted to the lender. Isabel closed the ledger. They did not only make your money disappear, she said, they turned you into an investor on paper in a company you did not know existed. The closing documents arrived several days later. Inside was a certification stating that I had voluntarily contributed $78,000 to Cedar Row Living LLC and expected no repayment. Beneath it was a signature that looked almost like mine. The loops were familiar, but the pressure looked hesitant, deliberate, and strangely rehearsed. I had never seen the document before. The signature specialist placed the capital contribution certification beside several tax returns bearing my real signature. Her conclusion was careful but firm. The signature on the certification had been imitated from older documents. Marcus already possessed. Several loops matched my tax filings closely. But the rhythm was wrong. The pen pressure stopped and restarted in places where my hand normally moved without hesitation. The date created another problem. According to the certification, I had signed it in Richmond. In reality, I had been exhibiting restored glasswork at a trade fair in Baltimore that entire day. Photographs, vendor records, and hotel receipts placed me there. The identity verification file listed Marcus's phone number as the contact for confirmation. There was no reliable evidence that I had appeared in person before anyone when the document was signed. Naomi did not promise that charges would follow immediately. "We finish the chain first," she said. "A false signature matters, but investigators will want the document, the money trail, the person who benefited, and the communications connecting them." The closing file also contained appraisal photographs of the duplex. The first images showed a small living room, a recently renovated kitchen, and a main bedroom furnished with inexpensive pieces. Then I reached the second bedroom. Its walls were painted pale blue. An unassembled crib leaned against one wall. Bags of infant clothes sat beside a rocking chair. Above the window was a stained glass iris panel patterned after my design. Celeste had not copied only a room. She had copied the symbol I had created for my daughter. The appraisal photographs had been taken 6 weeks before the assault, while Celeste was still showing me rental rejections and asking Marcus to persuade me she needed time. She had stood in my kitchen describing herself as homeless, while a nursery for my child was waiting elsewhere. Naomi found another file inside the electronic records. Its title was Postpartum Transition Plan. The document proposed that Marcus temporarily manage Blue Lantern Glassworks after Iris was born. Clients would be redirected to him. Celeste would provide daytime care. Diane would be told that I needed complete rest. My access to financial decisions would be reduced until I was considered stable enough to return. There was also an unsigned draft granting temporary caregiving authority to Celeste. One note warned that I might resist due to postpartum emotions. The plan had no legal force because I had never signed it, but it revealed what they intended. Wait until I was exhausted, frightened, and recovering, then present surrender as temporary help. Naomi obtained hundreds of messages between Marcus and Celeste. They were intimate, but there was no clear proof of a physical affair. They discussed money, the studio, the duplex, my supposed instability, ways to influence Diane, Marcus's belief that he deserved control, and Celeste's claim that she would be the more dependable caregiver. An affair would have taken my marriage. What they built was meant to take my money, my work, my voice, and my place as Iris's mother. Naomi then contacted Ryan through his attorney. Ryan admitted closing the joint account, moving to another state, and demanding that Celeste stop contacting him directly. He also admitted he had been cold, dismissive, and emotionally absent during their marriage. But the records told a different story from the one Celeste had given us. She had opened secret credit cards, transferred money to an acquaintance, and submitted a loan application containing a signature Ryan denied writing. When he froze the accounts, she told relatives he was controlling her financially. Ryan's word alone proved nothing. His former attorney produced bank statements, emails, formal complaints, account freeze requests, and an earlier handwriting report. The pattern became visible. Anyone who imposed a limit became controlling. Anyone who refused to rescue Celeste became cruel. She took pieces of truth and arranged them into a story where she was the only victim. When I showed Diane the records, she said Marcus must have manipulated Celeste. Why? I asked. Do we look for a man to carry the blame every time Celeste hurts someone? My mother had no answer. Nearly 10 weeks after Marcus struck me, contractions began. Marcus requested through his attorney to be present, but the protective order allowed communication only through counsel. I chose Talia and Diane to stay with me. As a nurse prepared to take my phone, a message from Naomi appeared. We found Marcus's spreadsheet, she wrote. The final column is labeled Celeste Liability. I read the words twice. Marcus may never have intended to protect my sister if the plan failed. He had not chosen Celeste. I had chosen someone useful enough to carry the risk. Iris was born after 14 hours of labor. Marcus was not there. Talia stayed beside me, counting my breaths when I lost the rhythm. Diane held a cup of ice chips and repeated the same quiet sentence whenever fear tightened my body. You are here. She is coming. You are not alone. When the nurse asked who would cut the cord, Diane stepped forward. I watched her hands tremble as she did it. Then Iris was placed against my chest, warm, furious, and impossibly small. For the first time in months, I was inside a relationship that did not require me to guess whether I was allowed to exist. Her fingers opened against my skin, and I understood that protecting her would require something different from winning against them. A week later, Naomi came to Talia's apartment and explained what would happen next. The hospital record, police report, protective order, and Marcus's messages would matter. They did not automatically erase his rights as Iris's father. If he followed court requirements, accepted supervision, and demonstrated safe behavior, he could still receive parenting time. You cannot use Iris as a reward or punishment, Naomi said. The question is, what protects her? I agreed. I wanted to keep my daughter safe, not possess her the way Marcus and Celeste had tried to possess my life. Isabel reviewed Marcus's spreadsheet several days later. Its columns were labeled Amount Transferred, LLC Assets, Duplex Exit Value, Evie Capacity, Postpartum Transition, and Celeste liability. Celeste liability measured how much responsibility could be left in my sister's name if the arrangement was discovered. Marcus had built an explanation in advance. Celeste had asked for a loan. Celeste had formed the LLC. Celeste had prepared the documents. Marcus had only transferred money to help a relative. I had known about the investment, but forgotten because pregnancy had made me confused and overwhelmed. He had not only planned how to take my money, he had planned the story he would tell after someone found it. Celeste's attorney showed her the spreadsheet. That was when she understood Marcus had never truly chosen her. I had chosen someone willing to place her name on the company, sign documents, carry the risk, and mistake usefulness for love. Celeste began cooperating, not because conscience suddenly transformed her. She wanted a better outcome for herself. She offered no apology before surrendering the evidence and never asked whether Iris or I were safe. She produced an email in which Marcus explained how to prepare the capital contribution certification. She surrendered messages where he wrote that I never checked tax payments. She provided a recording of him saying I could be described as too unstable to manage property or the studio. She also gave investigators messages about the nursery and the complete postpartum transition plan. One sentence appeared twice. After Iris is born, Evie will be too exhausted to fight anything. During her deposition, Celeste insisted Marcus had made everything sound legal. Naomi placed a photograph of the duplex nursery in front of her. Did Marcus also make you buy clothes for a child whose mother did not know that house existed? Celeste said nothing. Then she looked toward me and said, I did not think you could handle motherhood and the business. The answer hurt because it was honest. Celeste did not merely pretend she deserved my place. She believed it. Our family had taught her that her needs were urgent, while my strength made my limits negotiable. Marcus blamed her in return. He said Celeste had manipulated his sympathy. He claimed he only wanted to help her become independent, knew nothing about a false signature, and had never had a romantic relationship with her. He accused me of exaggerating everything to gain custody. The messages and spreadsheet showed months of planning. At mediation, Marcus finally said, Things got out of control. I asked. When? When you made the first transfer? When you used my signature? Or when you struck me to protect the person holding the property? He stared at the table. I waited, then realized I no longer needed an answer. Afterward, Naomi explained that the divorce might finish first. The civil case, the criminal investigation, and the review of Marcus's CPA license will move separately, she said. Will justice actually come? I asked. Not on the same day, she replied, but that does not mean nothing is happening. I thought of court notices, subpoenas, licensing letters, and bank records arriving one by one. Justice. I began to understand. Sometimes came in different envelopes. The divorce order did not restore my life to what it had been before Marcus struck me. The court confirmed that the equity I had built in the house before marriage was my separate property. The inheritance from May remained traceable to me. Marcus received limited credit for marital funds used to reduce the mortgage, but that amount was offset against the money judgment arising from the funds he had diverted. I was awarded primary physical custody of Iris. At first, Marcus could see her for 2 hours each week at a court-approved visitation center. A professional supervisor remained present. Celeste was not permitted to attend, wait outside, or communicate through him. The parenting plan included steps Marcus had to complete before the schedule could expand. He was required to attend an accountability program, participate in therapy, obey the protective order, appear consistently, and never use Iris to carry messages to me. I did not call that forgiveness. My job is not to decide whether he has become a good man. I told Talia, my job is to watch what he does and keep my daughter safe. The duplex required a separate civil case against Marcus, Celeste, and Cedar Row Living LLC. Naomi sought tracing of the stolen funds, a constructive trust, an equitable lien, and repayment. Eventually, the parties entered a consent judgment. Celeste surrendered her interest in the duplex. A lien was placed on the property. Cedar Row had 6 months to refinance and repay part of the judgment or sell the building. I did not receive $96,400 in one check. Some of the money had already been absorbed by renovations, closing costs, loan payments, and legal expenses. Recovery came slowly, reduced by the cost of proving that the money had belonged to me. Marcus's employer suspended him when the internal investigation began, then terminated him. The Virginia Board of Accountancy opened a licensing review. He faced possible charges involving fraud and false documents. While those matters remained unresolved, he found bookkeeping work that did not give him access to client assets and moved into a small apartment. He did not lose everything in one afternoon. The consequences arrived in layers. Celeste remained liable under the civil judgment and under investigation for the source of funds documents. Her cooperation was considered, but it did not erase her choices. She agreed not to approach my home, Blue Lantern, or Iris's childcare. She had no court-ordered visitation and could communicate with me only through attorneys. Some relatives thought I was too severe. One aunt said, "She is still your sister." "Missing a birthday is a mistake," I replied. 18 months of transfers, a false signature, and a room prepared for my child were decisions. Weeks later, Diane came to the studio. She stood beside a dismantled church window and said, "I called you strong whenever I needed you to endure something unfair. I taught Celeste that her tears mattered more than your boundaries." I did not hug her. "You did not create what they did," I said, "but you helped both of us believe I would always pay the price to keep the family whole." Diane did not defend herself. After that, she stopped forwarding Celeste's letters. She gave Naomi the messages Celeste had sent about my supposed instability. She did not ask when I would forgive anyone. She called before visiting. She never asked for a key. Winning did not make me feel safe again. Blue Lantern stayed closed for weeks, and I lost clients. Even after reopening, I checked the accounts too often. I startled when someone stood behind me. Some mornings, entering the studio required more courage than I expected. The old house felt worse. Marcus was gone. But each room carried memories of being watched, corrected, or quietly replaced. I decided to sell it, not because Marcus had won. I did not want Iris growing up in a place once used to convince her mother that she did not belong there, while clearing storage at Blue Lantern. I found a stained glass panel May had left unfinished. Most of the glass remained intact. The lead frame, however, was cracked and weak. Years earlier, I had planned to replace all of it so the window would look untouched by age. This time, I chose another way. 1 year later, Iris and I lived in a smaller house near Blue Lantern. It had no formal dining room and no sweeping staircase. There was a narrow yard, a maple tree outside the kitchen window, and a nursery painted the soft blue I had chosen. Above Iris's crib hung the finished Iris panel. Only Talia and I had keys. She always texted before using hers. That courtesy mattered. It reminded me that giving someone access did not mean surrendering the right to decide when that access was used. Blue Lantern Glassworks was open again. I hired a full-time apprentice named Mara, patient and willing to ask questions. I no longer tried to carry every responsibility alone, but I never placed complete control in one person's hands. An independent accounting firm handled the books. Important accounts required 2 levels of review. Every tax payment came with confirmation. I received regular reports, and no one could create and approve the same transaction. For a while, those safeguards felt like fear. Eventually, they felt like structure. I learned that accepting help did not require giving away control. Marcus attended most visits with Iris. The schedule expanded gradually, but remained structured. He completed the required programs, arrived on time, and followed the rules. I stopped trying to decide whether he had truly changed or was simply doing the minimum expected. His intentions were no longer my responsibility. I watched his actions. I kept Iris safe. That was enough. Diane visited sometimes. The first time she came to the new house, she stood on the porch after knocking and waited. She did not test the handle or call through the door. When I opened it, she asked whether it was still a good time. I realized my mother was learning that love also needed to be invited inside. Our relationship had not returned to what it was. Perhaps it never would, but it was being rebuilt through repeated actions instead of promises made. Celeste sent one letter through her attorney. For the first time, she wrote plainly. She admitted she had lied. She knew the money was not a voluntary contribution. She had wanted to be chosen instead of me. She had turned compassion into permission and permission into ownership. She acknowledged that she had no right to ask for contact with Iris. I read the letter once, then I returned it to the envelope. For the first time, my sister had written the truth. But truth was not a key that automatically reopened a door. At the studio, I finished restoring May's old stained glass panel. I removed each piece, cleaned it, reinforced the frame, preserved the lead lines that remained safe, and replaced only the sections that could no longer support the glass. I did not make the window look untouched by age. A client asked why I had kept so much of the old lead. "It does not make the picture uglier," I said. "It gives each piece a boundary, so the light can pass through without bringing the whole window down." That evening, I stood in Iris's nursery and held her beneath the blue irises. I understood that kindness did not require leaving every door open. Being deceived did not mean I had been foolish. Family did not have the right to purchase peace with one person's safety. Strength was not measured by how much pain someone could absorb. Boundaries did not block the light. They gave it structure through which it could pass safely. I once believed real love needed no locks, passwords, or lines. Now I know everything built to last needs structure. A home needs keys, an account needs oversight, a window needs lead, and a heart has the right to decide who may enter. Have you ever been called selfish for setting a boundary with someone you loved? What was the first sign that your kindness had become an expectation? Share your story in the comments if it feels safe. And subscribe for more stories about family, justice, and reclaiming the right to choose your own life.